spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. Does that verse kind of remind you of any verse? Does something jump out at you when I read that you stand fast in one spirit with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel? Ephesians 4 comes to mind, and what else?
There's one gospel, one hope, one pastor.
That was it. And then don't forget 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10. You know, you be of the same mind, the same spirit. You know, you all speak the same things, what he mentioned there. But yeah, those two verses, those two texts are important. And then he went on to say, verse 28, and not in any way terrified by your adversaries, which is to them a proof of perdition, but to you of salvation, and that from God. For to you it has been granted on behalf of Christ not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake, having the same conflict which you saw in me, and now here is in me. Okay, we're going to go to chapter 2 in just a moment. But finishing up chapter 1 there, I guess you'd have to summarize what Paul is trying to encourage the brethren to be, other than what I just read there in verse 27. What was 28 and 29 basically encouraging the brethren to do? Which we would all need. What's that?
They need to be courageous and not be intimidated
From what?
from the adversaries, from, you know, the people of the world.
Can we really relate to that? I mean, you guys do we have any adversaries? I mean, who's persecuting us?
The world. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Okay. What are they trying to get us to do? I mean, they're back on sin. Yeah, I mean, the whole point that you know, their persecution might be a little different, but the bottom line is the persecution that they were going to face was going to tempt them to do what? Obviously. Yeah, just turn your back on the Lord. I mean, any kind of persecution that you face. And so persecution can raise its ugly head in many different forms. And so the spirit of compromise is what we face all the time, where people are trying to get us. Don't be so strict. Come on, be a little more lenient. Relax a little. Don't take truth so serious. You know, it's good to be religious, but don't be a fanatic about it. And so, of course, so we're faced with that all the time. And so, like you say, trying to become more like the world, create more gray area. And people love gray area because what does that do? What does creating gray area do?
Gives them freedom to do what they want to do.
Freedom. That's their word. We'll have to put that in parentheses, right? It gives them freedom, because freedom to do whatever they want to. It eases their conscience. When you get into a gray area, guys, you're comfortable with that. We're uncomfortable when it's the straight and narrow, okay? But the point is we want to be comfortable with the straight and narrow. That's what he was talking about there in verse 29. For you it has been granted on behalf of Christ not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake. What's that remind you of? Didn't Paul talk about what a joy it was, you know, to be able to suffer for the cause of Christ? The persecutions have the negative side, but the positive side of the things that you and I face every day, it gives us a chance to stand up for the Lord. It gives us the opportunity to say, no, I have my priorities right. It makes us stronger, is what it does. And in the process, I concluded this chapter by basically talking, what did Paul's example do for them? They saw it. EJ?
It sounds like it's like he showed them that you can either follow XYZ or you can follow me and be strong in the Lord, and don't let XYZ confuse you, sweet talk you, sugarcoat you, whatever they want to do to join them. So,
right. So Paul's example, like you said, you know, if you follow my example, and of course, how many of us can say that? I mean, I would hope that everybody here can stand up and say, you know what? It would be good if you followed my example in the way I attend, in the way I pray, and the way I study, and the way I'm good to my fellow workers. I just want you, as a good husband. I mean, how many of us stand up and say, follow be like me in these areas? Who would do that? All of us, right? Well, you say, well, check, I'm not married. But in the examples that I gave, Paul's saying, follow my example. Why? Who's his example?
Christ.
I mean, let's face it, guys. I mean, we're basically saying, I want to live like Christ, which was the whole point of this chapter, this next chapter getting in. I mean, it is a great chapter, chapter 2. I'm chomping at the bit to get into it because we're going to be getting back to that. We're going to get down to like verse 5, which is crucial, where he says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. The point is, you and I are Christians. And if you're Christians, then you are like Christ. And so let's face it, if Warren's like Christ and I'm like Christ, what does that mean about us? We're the same, right? I mean, that's the point. That's why we can say, you can follow Paul's example, or I could follow your example as a husband. I could follow your example as a citizen of this country. Well, you could follow my example as a land immigrant. But the point is, you and I can follow and imitate that because Christ is our supreme example, which is the point that he's trying to get us to see here, which we get into in this next chapter. I'm talking about, well, why would I want to be like that? Why would I want to be like Jesus? Because he can talk about, here he is, he leads the glories of heaven. I mean, that's really going to drive it home. The kind of person that we are trying to imitate. Why would I want to be like you? Aren't we supposed to set the example, right? Matthew chapter 5, let your light shine before men so they can see your example and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So obviously, and I don't know how many of us do this. I don't do this on a regular basis, but I'm saying, what? I want to leave an example of how you treat other people. So listen to the way I speak about other people. I want to be an example. I want you to take my example when you leave here. So, okay. Well, Chuck talked about so-and-so and so-and-so, stab them in the back. So I guess I'll go and do the same thing. See, we need to be mindful of what kind of an example are we setting in all areas. And, of course, Paul's main one that he was talking about here is how he faced persecution. And I'll tell you what, when you have adversity in your life, hardship in your life, you're going to see people look at you. And you can make a great impression. I know it has to me in the past when I've seen people, like my brother even here, when I've seen you face adversity in your life, sadness, and I see how you handle it, how can it not encourage me? And it did with Paul. Okay, anything else before we get into chapter 2? Okay, let's start over here. Ellen, Mark, you guys will go backwards on this. It'll be Mark and Ellen for the first 4 verses.
Therefore, if there's any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy, be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, one mind.
Do not become selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, let each of you regard one another as more important than himself. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others.
Verse 4. Put a sermon together, verses here, and say, here is a recipe for what? Give me a word. This is a surefire recipe for what? Unity. I like that one. Another word? For love? Humility. I mean, you talk about a recipe for success, for the kind of godly living that we need to be as far as brethren relations. Somebody mentioned unity, and that's really the primary thing here. But really, when you look at these 4 verses, if we implement everything that we just read there in those 4 verses, are we going to have problems here? It's kind of a trick question. Are we going to have problems here? Well, we have problems. Problems will come up. But here gives us the solution. But yeah, it'll nip problems, no question about that. I'm not going to think things about you. I'm not going to be envious about you. We're going to be the same mind. We shouldn't have a problem here. But if a problem does creep up, because sometimes if somebody wants to be ungodly, we have the solutions of how to fix it, what to do with it. And so let's go to our text and see what he's talking about here. So therefore, in connection with what he just talked about in the previous chapter, if there's any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, any fellowship of the Spirit, any affection and mercy. So in other words, if he's talking about all those things that you can achieve, fulfill my joy by being this way. Well, wait a minute. Can you actually achieve those things by not doing it the way he's talking about here in verse 2? Can you actually achieve it a different way? In our minds, we might. I mean, not only in our minds, we might do it and think it's God approved. Could we have unity here that's not approved by God?
Sure.
How?
We could all unite on something that's not doctrinal, but we could all say it is, and then march along as if it's okay.
Okay. Anything else? What about if we all just have the same bad attitude towards one another? Well, that's just kind of the norm. Hey, man, you hate me, I'll hate you. I'm good with that. All right, we'll just not get along. We'll agree not to get along. Do you ever know anybody that they're not happy unless everybody's unhappy? Jane?
This is individual responsibility.
Yes.
I mean, if you're one out of a 50, you've still got to do it.
Yeah, that's it. And I like that because, it's easy to read these verses and say, I'll do it, and then put that little word if behind it, right? We'll say, I'll do this if they do their part. I'll do it if he does his part. Sometimes that's the problem when you get into a marriage. You want to fix it? You got each party going, well, I'll do it if he will. I'll do it if she will. Well, if somebody would just take the high road here, or do they call that the low? No, you just do the right thing. And this is why, like Gene's talking about here, he's writing to the Philippian brethren, got them all gathered together here, but he wants every one of them to do their part. It's great to have this fellowship of the Spirit and the affection of mercy, but you're going to fulfill my joy. Paul says, fulfill my joy by being like-minded. Why should we care what Paul thinks? I'm back at it again. A J. All right. Why would we, Mark?
It's really not Paul speaking, it's God speaking.
All right. But was Paul not meaning his joy though? Would this actually fulfill Paul's joy if they were like-minded? Okay, so he's writing by inspiration. So why would we care? Why would the brethren of Philippi care about Paul's joy? I mean, it's, don't you want me to be happy laboring here? Please say yes. Somebody please say yes. Yeah, don't you want me to be happy here, right? Right? Why would you care? Hopefully, if you do care and you really meant it, why would you care? All right.
You'll be more effective if you're happy, if you feel like you're, you feel like you've got the support of the people around you. I mean, that's just human nature.
True. But even though I asked the question about why making me happy, it's not about me though. Dave?
Well, to see that you're fulfilling an example for Christ.
Guys, you've got the answer. It's right there in the text. Why would you be concerned about me being happy about you all, Trey?
Because we all want to agree to be happy together and work together in one mind for the same purpose.
Right. And so if Paul's joy there, who are they serving? Right. And so that's the whole point here. It's like, if this congregation, I mean, and it's not just me, it's us looking at each other, but I'm using myself as an example. And so if I'm happy, it's because things are going well here. The brethren are getting along. They're serving the Lord. Am I really going to be happy if we have discord here, if there's immorality here, there's hatred here? There's no joy. there's no joy. You say, well, why would I care about that? Because if the good is there, it's because people are serving the Lord. It's not like just please me, do whatever I want, which, remember, that gets us off track. Where congregations, you could have a preacher that rules with an iron fist. He says, I don't care so much about this, just do what I say. Well, no. And that's the connection what Paul's talking about here. My joy, I want this joy. I want you guys to be this way. I guess I'm writing by inspiration, as Mark mentioned. But my joy is based upon you doing what the Lord says. That's the bottom line. For all of us here, right? Our joy, remember when Paul talked about, I was shipwrecked, left for dead, stoned, all those things. Does anybody remember what he told the Corinthian brethren? Besides all of this, there was one more thing that was
His heart breaks for them.
his concern for the churches. You know, he throws that right in with being shipwrecked, being left for dead, being hungry, being beaten with rods. The concern for the church, the churches. So the brethren was on his mind. And so he wanted joy there. You and I want joy. I mean, who wants to come here today without joy? Gene? And then Dave.
Of course, this adheres to, quote, this here.
Yeah.
But also, this teaching applies to our whole life.
Yes.
In other words, just like if you train a young one in the home to do this and do that, whatnot, then when that person goes out and grown up, they're going to carry that with them.
Right.
So we're going to carry this with us. In other words, if I'm adhering to this, and I'm not going to go home and say, and start being misbehaving to Betty. It doesn't apply.
Well,
It applies. That doesn't make sense.
But see, this is what makes it dangerous. It's not dangerous, but a warning for us. It's a warning for all of us here. Nothing will turn family, children off, your mate off. Nothing will turn visitors off more than to see us in a class like this, talking about verses like this, and then walking out the door and doing the exact opposite right away. It just, they're like going, what? This is a joke.
I had a conversation, I didn't have a conversation with the accountant. He wanted to do something and sent some goods back to the company. And I just called another accountant and said, do you need some merchandise? I said, yes. So I go in and I pull in the back of the store, get my boxes, and I'm in there getting the goods, counting them, putting them in there. And he comes in there and he stood there a few minutes and he said, Gene, you don't have to be so nice about this. In other words, he wanted a confrontation.
Right.
I said, no problem. I said, I'll send you a check. Well, okay. But he didn't want that. He didn't want to do what he wanted to do.
Exactly. And again, getting back to your previous point, we have to be mindful of the example, not just when we're here. I think it is so easy for you and I to engage in this conversation, talk about these verses saying, yes, that's what we need to be. We need to be like-minded. We need to have the same love, being of one accord and of one mind. If you guys asked me a couple of times the same thing, would I be so irritated? But man, if my granddaughter asked me 15 times, every time I'd have a smile on my face, I'd light up and say, sure, honey. You know, I said we would. Sure, I said we would. But you know, that kind of love that we're to have for one another that he mentions there, and being of one accord and one mind. Now remember, we're going verse by verse, we're going slow. But he's going to be tying it together how we achieve that. That's the good news. It's one thing to say, be like this. Well, how do I achieve this one mind? Well, let this mind be in you, which we're going to read in verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. That's the point. If we remove Christ from the picture here, we're in trouble. And a lot of religious groups have done that. Well, they have him there just as a figurehead. But if you're going to follow Christ, you better listen to what he says. He's the head of this church. Get it? Jesus is the head of this church. It's not my church, not your church. We can't say, this is my church. My church. It's Christ. And if it is his, then we better have authority for everything that we do. Now, if we do something here without his authority, but we're still happy about it. That's not the unity that he's talking about here. And that's not being of the same mind, the way that our same mind is having the mind of Christ within us is the key here. That's what we're trying to achieve. Dave, you were going to say something a moment ago. What was it?
We're talking about one accord and
Yeah.
unity and division, and I kind of like what it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 25. It goes along with this, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another.
Same. Now I love this because we're talking about that not having half the congregation is the givers and the other half are the takers. That's not what I read here. I see him having the same love. I want you to cater to me, Chuck, but I'm not catering to you. I want you to be nice to me, but I'm not going to be nice to you. I want you to be loving towards me, but I'm not going to be loving in return because I like this group because I can take and take and take and take and take. And don't you realize that if you're like that, you're kind of pulling the group down. We're not firing on all cylinders. We're kind of being handicapped. That's not going to stop us, as Gene says, that's not going to stop us from doing our part. Everybody will love as they should. We will try to do the best that we can, but I can't make another brother be of one mind. I can try to do my part. You got to do your part. And that's what I like about this text, because he's telling them, let nothing be done through selfish ambition. What could be done here? What could be done in the Christian life that's of selfish ambition? We need some practical things here. If I'm going to avoid it, what would be something that you and I could be guilty of doing, but it's of selfish ambition? Dan?
Overemphasizing certain roles within the church, namely the ones that you do.
Oh, isn't that true? If I'm just going to focus on the importance of preaching, that's the best. You know, selfish ambition, I'm going to do it. The only reason I'm preaching is for the pat in the back. And as soon as I don't get the praise, I'm gone. As soon as I don't get the big bucks, I'm gone. You know, just you put those conditions upon there, but it's all about selfish ambition. I'm going to lead songs if I'm going to be the only song leader, because I am the only good song leader here. You know, it's not me saying this, but you know, I am. You know, that attitude of I'm only going to do it of what's in it for me. It's all about me. And the passage that Dave read, and he's talking about here, being the Christian is being selfless, not selfish. That's what he's describing here. Don't be selfish. Now, a selfless person isn't thinking about himself. He's not of selfish ambition or conceit. But in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Now, the latter part of verse 3, we need to get the balance here. Are we supposed to have low self-esteem? Is that what he's preaching here? I want you Christians to have low self-esteem. So how do you balance it? Guys, he's telling us to do, I mean, if we don't know how to do what he's telling us to do, then these words are falling on deaf ears. So when he says, do this in lowliness of mind and esteem others better than himself. Low self-esteem. What's the problem with low self-esteem? What's the problem with that, Nicole?
You're still thinking of yourself.
You said, well, how so? I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, like my translation says humility of mind. This lowliness of mind is thinking about other people. It's not thinking about you. When you have low self-esteem, you're focused on you. You're like, I'm not good enough. I'm worthless. I'm bad, whatever. I mean, all your concentration is on you and your lack of worth instead of other people.
Okay, so I like that. So you're going to talk about, if I look at this, my lack of worth, you know, you're sitting there saying you're only centering on self. What else happens? That's huge. And which is the opposite of what he's talking about here. People think low self-esteem is humility. No, low self-esteem is the opposite of it, which people have a hard time grasping. Nancy?
Well, the definition I've heard is to not think less of ourselves, but to think of ourselves less.
Okay, and that does tie into it. So a person that has low self-esteem, what other harm does it cause?
You're not thinking of others.
You're not thinking of others.
Well, you're taking for granted what Christ has given you. It says, we're made in the image of Christ. So when you're thinking poorly of yourself, you're not giving thanks for the things that he has given you and the abilities that he has given you.
Yeah, I mean, here we are. If we're, like Kayla's talking about, if we're to be Christ-like, could you picture Jesus like that? Could you see Jesus walking around with poor self-esteem? You're God with us. Now, he doesn't want us walking around like we're acting like we're God. But no, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it's kind of like people need to see, that's not good. That's not a good, trying to reword, I can't improve on what Kayla said, but you're just making Christ in a bad light of really what he's come to do for us as far as transforming us. I just saw him. Who was it? There's Matt.
Well, I think also when you have low self-esteem, you end up not doing any of the work and you expect other people to do it for you because you think you can't do it, or it's why bother? It's never going to be good enough. So.
That's exactly right. The low self-esteem, I'll let other people do it, woe is me. Again, it's all about me, as was mentioned before, and not thinking about Jesus and how I'm supposed to be like him. What are we going to say, Warren?
Well, I don't know if Paul follows up. I think he says lowliness of mind, and then say I think sometimes where it's important for us, to be careful. It comes out of the part of love. The perfect expression is, true love is never having to say you're sorry. Nothing could be further from the truth.
True.
You need to be able to say I'm sorry. You need to be able to put yourself, before you condemn somebody else, you need to bring yourself to the realization that, hey, I have done worse than that. I'm not a bit better than that person.
Right. It's true. And I want to couple that with what Mallory just said. The whole problem with low self-esteem is forgetting the fact that you need to be changing. Isn't that the point? Aren't we changing as God's people as we're growing? A low self-esteem person is just, they're just stuck in just being down all the time, because where's the joy? I mean, there's just so many problems with this if we don't apply with what Paul's talking about here. Dan.
I was going to say that Paul gives us the positive example of this back in the first chapter when he was talking about how he wanted to get out of prison to go work with the brethren, because and we see both sides of it right there. He wants to get out so that he can work with them, not so he can get out for his own purposes, but he's still got that confidence that if he gets out, he can help them and he can improve on their situation by being there.
That's exactly right. I just can't help but see how this can be a spiral down. How do you get yourself out of this? But I have seen people face hardships even here, and yet go out of their way to be kind to other people. I mean, you've lost a loved one, somebody comes over and brings you food. It's so easy to go, well, you should have given me that. It is all about me, but I've seen people go, thank you. I really appreciate that. That was kind of you to do that. Hey, think nothing of it. But again, when you have that sadness, and there's nothing wrong with having sadness and hardship in your life, but I'm talking about that low self-esteem. I'm not talking about, you walk around like you're arrogant, like you're somebody special, the attitude of entitlement. That's the way it's supposed to be. That lowliness of mind, thinking less of self. Yes, that is the key. And thinking about other people, but not thinking about other people so much about what they should have done for you. It's like, well, I think about other people all the time, Chuck. Oh, that they should have thanked me for this. They should have done this for me, and they're better than me. Well, like Nicole pointed out, all that really is thinking about yourself. Is all that is. Okay, now let's get into this next area here. Well, actually, verse 4, it mentioned, let each of you look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. Isn't that none of my business? Is that not being nosy? How do you look out not only for your own interests, but also the interests of others? What's that commanding me to do? What's that commanding us to do? That last statement.
let each other know what our needs are so that people can know. That's one
Okay, so one way, okay. What else? Now,
Isn't it also similar to like Romans 14 where you can see, you know, you give into other people's like, you know, weaknesses or whatever. You don't try to force your feelings on people, especially like in the opinion.
that's especially that's Romans 14. You're absolutely right. Looking out for the interests of others. I don't want to cause them to stumble. You're right, and right.
But if you see me stumbling, look out for my best interest and let me know.
Okay, well, what's it going to take for me to do that?
You have to know me,
I have to know you. I have to.
be involved in.
I have to be looking, right? I have to be looking at you. I have to be looking at your lives. I can't go through life saying, that's none of my business. I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, I can't give you a passage that says, I have to know what you do for a living. But there's something wrong that if I've known you for 20 years and I know nothing about you, about your families, about your job situation or whatever it might be, because, you know, we're looking out for one another. We're looking out for each other in the interests of others, Mal.
And it's also not just me asking, you know, having an interest in you, but you have to be willing to share with other people without feeling like, oh, you're just being nosy about my life. Like, you have to give people a benefit of the doubt, like that they actually genuinely care.
And by the way, Mal, is that easy to do? No, I mean, we're talking about areas where you might have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, right? It's not easy to do that. EJ?
I just have a quick dumb question.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that couldn't that tie in with Cain and Abel when God asked Cain, where's your brother? And he says, am I my brother's keeper?
I think it does. I think it ties in there exactly because that person's like, I don't even care about him. Obviously, he knew. And again, that could happen. A practical thing here would be, you know, somebody comes in here and hey, can you tell when somebody's been crying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell when somebody's been crying. Well, somebody comes in and you can tell somebody's been crying and they come in and they sit down there. You know, is there something wrong? Go, don't. Something's wrong over there. Don't. No, you don't avoid them. You actually go to them and you want to talk with them. And they might not open to you, but they might open up to somebody, especially if it's a lady. And tell a sister, you know, I saw Sister so-and-so. That's kind of pretty, you know, something's wrong. You might want to go over there and see what's going on, help them out that way. That would be the appropriate thing to do. But yeah, you don't avoid one another, but you have to be interested. And I love that word that he mentions here. He says not only your own interest, but also the interests of others. You need to be genuinely concerned. Gene?
What we got to remember is it's pretty easy to be the one that's going to go to your brother and, you know, say this or that. But the problem comes sometimes when somebody comes to you and says, you know, Chuck, have you ever thought about doing this instead of, you know, this?
Yeah, right.
And there's where the rubber beats the road.
I think you're 100% right, Gene, because it's so, you know, it's both sides, right? It's kind of that area of being humble enough, and we've used it in sermon illustrations, other Bible classes where somebody says, look I found out you needed some help. Why didn't you call me? You know, we're kind of upset about that. Why didn't you call me? You needed some help. Why didn't you call me? Well, my wife told me the other day you needed some help, but you didn't call anybody. Yeah, but I'm here to help you. Don't worry about me. But can we receive it? Would you call somebody up, you know, for a ride to church services? I don't want to bother anybody. Can you believe that somebody would say that? Can you believe a Christian would say, well, I didn't want to bother you? Seriously? And what Christian wouldn't go help another Christian? Oh, they'd be the first one to go, but I'm not calling somebody else. EJ?
Could something similar to, on the other hand, time of what Paul was talking about? Because I'm sensing no sense of affection because some of the people back there have no sense of affection for no one. They only have it for themselves. And it's like, they have that I don't give a care attitude.
Well, I think he's warning them against that, EJ. I think you don't tell people, I don't care who you are, you don't tell any congregation, let nothing be done through selfish ambitions unless there's that danger that it could happen. You don't tell somebody to be lowliness of mind and esteem others better than themselves unless it's possible that people don't esteem anybody better than themselves, and they're not lowliness in mind. And you don't tell people to look out on the interest of others unless there's people out there that don't look on the interest of others. And that's a command to all of us, guys, and I really want us to keep that in mind. Now, I know we only got 6 minutes left, and we won't finish it all, but to show you how it all ties in together, let's read the next 5 through 11. Now we're Jean, Betty, back to Dave, and if there's anything left, or Mark, and then over to TJ.
Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God,
But emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, and death on the cross.
For this reason also God highly esteemed him and bestowed upon him the name which is above every name, so that the name of Jesus every knee will bow, of those who are in heaven and on the earth and under the earth.
And that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
Wow. I mean, the latter part of that talks about how great Christ is. All right. In other words, what he achieved, what he accomplished. But he didn't get that without doing the other things first. And how many times did Jesus preach about, if you want to be exalted, what do you got to do? Be abased, humble yourself. You know, it's hard because we think the opposite. You know, if I'm going to be exalted, I got to do the exalting. You know, people think that if people are going to realize how great I am, I got to brag on myself. The psalmist or the proverb writer talked about, you know, if you're going to receive the praise, let it be through somebody else's lips. But, you know, sometimes we just think we got to do that. And you run into people like that all the time. And yet I read this section of scripture and I see what Jesus did in being glorified because of what he did. And I want us to learn that. And we all need to be applying that to our lives. Because I don't think we're going to appreciate Jesus at all. Part of my sermon this morning. I don't think we're really ever going to appreciate him like we should until we know what he gave up to come. That's the bottom line. I mean, you and I have all been impressed with people that have done things for us when you heard about what they had to do in order to do that. I mean, this isn't going across the street and asking somebody for a cup of sugar. You know, that's not a big deal. But asking somebody to do something for you that's going to require a lot of sacrifice on their part, you don't pass that off easily. Which we had discussed, and Jesus had to do parables on it, right? Didn't Jesus he had to do the parable of the guy that was forgiven the great debt? Why did Jesus tell a parable like that? Well, to let people understand that, you know, you should have really been thankful. That should have changed your life. That should have caused you to treat other people differently when you realized what I did for you. I forgave you this debt. There's no way I was going to have your wife and your children and all that you have and you put in prison. I wanted you to be back. And I had mercy on you. That should have caused you to be merciful towards other people. So what's going to transform you and I? What's going to help us to be like Jesus is to realize what he gave up. So somebody tell me what he gave up. What did he do? What did he give up? Well, what's so big about that? So he left heaven, Mark.
Well, I mean, this might be debatable, but I believe he gave up a lot more than location. Because Jesus being God and man, he had to give up at least enough of his deity to be able to die on the cross.
Well, he didn't have to give up deity. He just took on the form of a body.
But he had to do it. So there had been something there because God cannot die.
No, the fleshly body did. Yeah, Jesus, his soul went to Hades.
Well, I understand.
I mean, you can't destroy Jesus.
You know, he being both God and man. Yeah. He gave something up. It wasn't, oh, I'm just going to go down the earth and I'm going to do this for you. It was a huge sacrifice.
Well, that's what we're trying to talk about. We're going to talk about why was it a huge sacrifice for him who was in heaven, who was in spirit form, because we know flesh and blood is not here. Came from heaven. We know that 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Okay, so he leaves heaven. Okay, that never departed from him. That's why we have God with us. All right, so I mean, this is God. He became flesh, but what he gave up is what he came. Okay, of no reputation. Tell me about how he came. Now.
Well, I think, he gave up the fact that, like, in heaven, nobody questioned his authority, nobody questioned anything he did. He comes to earth as a man. He has to then prove himself, whereas in heaven, he's like, I don't have, it's already given.
Right.
And I think, that's a lot of, even as a man, once you attain, power or praise or whatever, to give that all up and it start all over again.
Well, any of you guys, if we send, it can't happen. We're going to send you to heaven. Whoa, this is great. Now you're going to come back. Now pick a family, pick a part of the world. What part of the world don't you want to be born in?
Where he was.
Pick a place today. Where don't you want to be born? Think about it. Seriously. Are you just any situation, and what kind of economic family don't you want to be brought into this world? Poverty. I don't mind maybe serious, but maybe somebody who's powerful, maybe somebody who's wealthy at least. When you start thinking about Jesus giving up the glories of heaven, where there's no temptation, there's no sin, as Mark's talking about, we can't even begin to describe what heaven is like. The Bible tries to give us glimpses of what it's like. And so we're going to pick up there next Sunday. I want you to be thinking about what it was really like to leave heaven. It gives you a week to think about what's in heaven or what's not in heaven that's here, to really give an impact, to realize how great it was for Jesus to come to this sin-infested world the way he did, to do all that he went through. That's what we really have to grasp, put our mind around. Gene?
He suffered as a man. Maybe sometimes this is hard for us to think. He's God. He suffered as a man.
He did. He was hungry.
He hurt.
Yes, it was pain. People got to remember that. We have this fleshly body of ours. And to think that Jesus didn't suffer, listen to him in the garden. You want to see the humanity side of Jesus? The divinity, the divine side of him, but the humanity, the human side of him was in the garden. Father, if possible, let this cup pass from me. Why, Jesus? I mean, you're God. You're not going to feel pain on the cross. Yeah, I am. It's going to hurt, and it's going to be painful. Anyways, guys, appreciate your comments, and we'll pick up there, Lord willing, next Sunday.